Hello, we're Group 13, Serengeti Rules, Keystone Species and Biodiversity. My name is Kiana Perez.
And my name is Sabrina Rosas. Okay, so we're gonna start with the history of the Serengeti, the ecosystem. The Serengeti ecosystem is part of East Africa's high interior plateau. Its highest parts are in Crater Highlands with an altitude of 3,636 meters towards the Speke Gulf of Lake Victoria and 920 meters above sea level. It reaches 12,000 square miles, which is why its name is derived from the Maasai language meaning endless plains. Moving on with seasonal changes, dry seasons begin from May to August, a dry and warmer season in September and October, while a wetter and hot season from November to April. Temperature goes from hardly exceeding 37 degrees Celsius on a hot afternoon in the rainy season in the Seronera area, and hardly ever going below 13 degrees Celsius on a cold early morning in the dry season, as well as average daily temperature changing with elevation from 15 degrees Celsius near the Crater Highlands to about 30 degrees Celsius near Lake Victoria. Species. Species have an estimate of wild bees between 1.3 and 1.7 million, zebras at 200,000, and thomsons and ground gazelles at around 500,000. These herds support around 7,500 hyenas, up to about 4,000 lions, and 500 to 600 cheetahs. The species do vary in the Serengeti depending on what part of the Serengeti ecosystem they are located. For example, the Tanzanian side of the Serengeti ecosystem supports about 3,000 to 4,000 individuals of lions, which are the largest population left in Africa. In the woodlands, impala, steinbok, dik-dik, elephant, and buffalo are all active in that area as well. Migration. Migration plays a big role in the Serengeti. The immense wild beast herd is the largest mammal migration on Earth. When the drought comes in May, the herds move north towards the Masai Mara in Kenya, at least until the south becomes green again, quickly followed by the gazelles and zebras as well. Crossing rivers means facing about 3,000 crocodiles patiently waiting for a kill. Not to mention as well the famous Serengeti lion population, by far the largest in Africa. A group of lions collaborating to hunt down a wild beast. Then, with the beginning of a short rains in late October, the migration makes its way back into the Serengeti. So by December, the herds trek past Seronera, which is a small settlement in central Serengeti, to return to their grounds again. And the circle is complete, which goes on and on for each year. So now the biodiversity. So biodiversity is huge in the Serengeti, starting with the fauna, which is the wild bees, number over 1.8 million individuals, constitute the largest population of big mammals in the Serengeti. Over 300,000 thomson and ground gazelles, 200,000 zebras, and tens of thousands of topi and cove harpies, Maasai giraffe, waterbuck, impala, warthog, and hippo. They are all called the Serengeti, their home as well. Switching to the flora of the Serengeti. These are some of the trees being present in the Serengeti. For example, sausage tree is the large tree that is only found in the Serengeti, usually along the dry river lakes. It produces remarkably long, up to 50 centimeters, juicy but poisonous fruits that drop from the tree and release seeds as the pulp rots. The fruit stalks can be seen for months after the fruit has dropped and is often mistaken for leopard's tail. The yellow fever tree is a common sight in wet areas along rivers or near swamps and floodplains. A tall, graceful tree with large white thorns, wide stretching branches, and yellow bark, which makes it distinctive. Early settlers noticed that malaria was more common near standing water, but blamed their fevers on the yellow tree, growing in the vicinity rather than mosquitoes, hence the name, the yellow fever tree. The umbrella tree represents Africa, its iconic shape breaking the flat landscape of the plants. The seedlings of this tree are favored by giraffes and elephants. Seedlings of the umbrella tree cannot survive bushfires, so only twice in the last 125 years have umbrella trees been able to establish en masse. Most of the umbrella trees in the Serengeti are 125 or 45 years old. Whistling thorn is an odd-looking tree that has hard, hollow spears at the base of its thorns, filled with biting ants. The tree encourages ants by providing shelter and food and extrafloral nectaries, which is a special flower-like structure, in exchange for protection. The name whistling thorn is derived from the whistling sounds made by the ants' entrance holes in the hollow galls. These short trees grow in abundance whenever the soil becomes seasonally water saturated. All these other trees also share their own unique characteristics. Okay, climate change is the main reason why wild beasts migrate, since it makes it harder for them to survive. For example, making the crossing even more difficult for these species. Increased rainfall intensity would cause the Mara River to run much higher than normal at certain points in the year, making it even more dangerous for wild beasts to complete their journey. As well as the Serengeti is unique because it is a transition area. There is a distinct changeover from the rich to flat soils in the southern plains to the much poorer, highly soils in the north, as well as the Serengeti being one of the oldest ecosystems in the world.
The Serengeti houses many habitat nests in which species interact and sequentially consume nutrients of various forms in order for the ecosystem to remain self-sufficient and support the vast amount of species. This three-dimensional diagram shows the varying abundance of grass species within the plant community. The species of grass that are most plentiful support residential grazing animals with smaller bodies that have more particular diets, while the larger migratory grazing animals such as wildebeest graze on seasonal grasses that are only available as they pass through that region. Although this energy map to the side of the three-dimensional image outlines how microbes are passed from one species to another, it provides a good overview of the complex food web that is characteristic of the Serengeti, starting from beneficial mycorrhiza fungi to provide a symbiotic relationship with grass and plant communities, which provide a habitat and food source for insects as well as birds and grazing animals such as gazelle, wildebeest, zebra, buffalo, impala, waterbuck, and reedbuck, that are then a food source for carnivorous animals that include cheetah, wild dog, leopard, lions, and hyenas. Next slide. As my groupmate discussed, the Serengeti is a vast and complex ecosystem with individual organisms vital for habitat survival. Unfortunately, there are many threats facing this unique place that is home to so many organisms. Two threats that are well known across the globe are poaching and deforestation. Despite poaching being highly looked down upon by conservationists in the majority of the world outside of the Serengeti, in order to fix the problem, we need to understand the reason behind this action. One impactful reason is the bushmeat trade. Hunting has been developed from minimal and sustainable hunting from native people out of necessity to an entire economy that results in about 97,000 to 140,000 wildebeest being killed per year. There are also recreational tourism and export markets responsible for contributing to animal endangerment, including rhino horn and elephant tusk ivory trading, cheetah hunting as poaching trophies, and young cheetahs being captured inhumanely as live pets. Other reasons are to confront a resource issue facing humans around the perimeter of the national park, as African wild dogs are threatening livestock and close by elephant population are causing crop damage. Deforestation is also damaging the ecosystem as local energy needs and logging demands are increasing. While these impacts are felt by all species in the Serengeti due to the cohesive characteristics of the ecosystem, the animals that have been most impacted by the African elephant with the vulnerable status, the black rhino, which is critically endangered, and the endangered African wild dog. Next slide. Another threat that has resulted in many negative outcomes around the world is climate change. As you can see from the map of Africa, climate change is disproportionately affecting East Africa, where the Serengeti is located, causing droughts during the dry season that are lowering the level of the Mara River. Changes in the rainy season that affect migratory movement of wildebeest and zebra, which could result in these species not following their normal migratory path, and instead disperse over a wide range. And climate change has socioeconomic consequences that further harm resources needed for wildlife conservation, habitat remediation, and causes more harmful behaviors in humans that we will discuss later. Next slide. While there are many natural species of flora and healthy microbes that contribute to life and energy flow in the Serengeti, some are not so beneficial. There have been many alien plants introduced into the ecosystem, whether intentionally or unintentionally, most of which are not harmful, but in the example of Parthenium hysterophorus, there was unintentionally introduced or unaided spread and became invasive to the natural biodiversity in ecosystems surrounding the Serengeti. This study has shown that while it can be managed, if it is not monitored, there is potential for Parthenium hysterophorus, as well as others, to become damaging to the Serengeti. Microbes have also been devastating in animal species, as in the 1900s, Winterpest virus spread throughout the wildebeest and buffalo, reducing the food source of many predators, then leading to sleeping sickness amongst humans, caused by tsetse flies spreading from wildebeest to cattle to humans. More recently, canine distemper, rabies, and parvovirus has spread from domestic dogs to lions, resulting in a 30% decrease in lion population, to the already endangered species of African wild dog, and to jackals and foxes. Next slide. Land fragmentation has also caused degradation in the perimeter of the protected land due to fragmentation of land lost to farming, livestock, and settlement with growing populations. Livestock of wealthy landowners with overgrazing pastures, lacking in off-season so that the farmland is unable to replenish due to overuse. And over time, this causes food scarcity and starvation, which can lead to increase in bushmeat trade that we discussed previously. Next slide. Linked to climate change, there is a water shortage within the Serengeti as well as around the continent. With the rising human population, there's an increasing competition between local civilizations. Kenya has proposed to build a hydro and irrigation dam to monopolize the Mara River and bring water to its people. While a solution needs to be made to provide resources to the people, the Mara River is the main source of water for wildlife, as it is the only year-round flowing river. It is involved in migratory behaviors of animals and interacts with animal outputs for nutrition limitation and ecosystem metabolism. If this is done, it will mean the collapse of the Serengeti. Next slide. We can see by comparing these two images, one is a population density map around the year 2016 for the Serengeti ecosystem, and the other is a projection of population growth in 2050, with more impacted regions directly outside of the border of the national park that you can see in red. This is crucial for the maintenance of the ecosystem because population growth leads to more need for agricultural land and livestock to feed local communities, overcrowding and stress on rangeland, potential for more roads, schools, and medical facilities being built, bringing in materials and construction camps, conflicts as more crops are damaged, invasive species continue to be introduced, poaching as an attempt to support the economy, and fencing demands, which is already seen around the Masai Mara Reserve. Next slide. The ramifications of human population growth are more acutely affects the area around the Serengeti National Park, as we can see pointed out in the diagram. There is more poverty amongst people right around the border. In Tanzania, 1,389,000 jobs are created for people either directly or indirectly by tourism, which is projected to increase to 2.1 million by 2027. While ecotourism brings attention to the problems facing the Serengeti, most locals do not share in the economic benefit. Despite community wildlife management programs being implemented, local people feel marginalized due to the costs associated with these programs. And reports of lack of individual and household benefits felt by participating in anti-poaching tactics. As the population increases, later generations lose a sense of culture and heritage that prides themselves in traditions and respect for their land around them. Next slide. Despite the morbidity of these problems facing the Serengeti ecosystem, many people and organizations are working towards combating these issues. Some of these groups include the Wildlife Conservation Society, the Tanzanian Wildlife Research Institute, and the World Heritage Convention. The Wildlife Conservation Society established the Cheetah Project 30 years ago, aimed at monitoring the birth and survival rates of cheetahs to be able to predict and prepare for any further challenges the species may face. Many projects are being conducted under the Tanzanian Wildlife Research Institute by foreign groups, as well as the Serengeti Wildlife Research Center within the Serengeti National Park. They are overall geared towards the conservation and further understanding of the ecosystem, biodiversity, and individual key species known to already be impacted by the threats we have outlined in this presentation. Future projects to be implemented are to find a way to improve water and power supply amongst local civilizations, which will reduce the threat of losing the Mara River for the Serengeti, and to dedicate more resources and time to migratory birds, insects, and additional species formerly neglected and not publicly well known. But they are still pivotal to the ecology. Advocates for the Serengeti National Parks are also looking to find a way to solve the water shortages issue by pushing it to move the park boundaries past a thin, unprotected strip of land to the water's edge of Lake Victoria that you can see in this image, which will then be protected under the World Heritage Convention as a World Heritage Site and Biosphere Reserve to provide an additional year-round water source to animals, anticipating the threats facing the Mara River. Next slide. As we saw that there are greater poverty-stricken areas around the perimeter of the Serengeti with little benefits from tourism economy and community programs, by the feedback seen in Table 1 in the previous slide, please. Thank you. Community programs will push for program and project facilitators to be more involved within the community population to coordinate needed projects as incentives for anti-poaching actions, as opposed to merely presenting information, and found income generating programs as an alternative instead of poaching, with more direct and household benefits. Next slide. While there is often a negative connotation found when on the topic of zoos, many are actually doing a great deal of conservation research, provide safe havens for many animals that reflect their native habitat, and work towards increasing the population and genetic diversity of threatened species. The Wilds Park in Columbus, Ohio does a great deal of this work and coordinates with many zoos and conservationists around the globe. As even here in California, our population grows and we have more resource needs, it's important to educate ourselves on the problems we are causing crucial ecosystems like the Serengeti and start participating in any way towards saving them. Next slides. And these slides are our sources. Thank you for watching our presentation.